Okay, good morning. I think I'll start by just reviewing very briefly what it is that I talked about yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon. Yesterday morning, I spoke to you about the critical importance of recognizing the fact that in your life and all human lives, in fact, that there is an abiding sense that's sometimes big, sometimes small, that fluctuates over time and circumstance, but an abiding and sense that there's something wrong, that there is some problem somewhere to be seen and solved, that life doesn't live up to its promise, human life doesn't live up to its promise, and that the life is kind of spoiled by this underlying sense of there being something wrong, something that needs to be fixed, that I haven't quite seen, or I haven't quite gotten, or I haven't quite been worthy of having it bestowed upon me. And how this underlying sense of dissatisfaction with life gives rise to literally innumerable arisings of phenomena that automatically come into place in order to protect us or provide us with the safety and the space to find a way out of the problem, or to find a way to get what it is that seems to be promised by life, and how these mechanisms and traits and patterns of behavior and so forth are so unpleasant. The need to be behind some wall of protection, the need to watch everything, the need to keep life at arm's length is so unpleasant that we naturally and understandably come to the conclusion, if we ever even consider it, but there is an assumption present in all of us that it is these aspects of my life, the aspects of my personality, aspects of my relationships and my desires and my aversions and so forth, that constitute the problem. And that what needs to be done is to do something about the fact that I am resistant, or the fact that I am clinging, or the fact that I want the wrong things, or fail to want the right things, that I am ignorant and confused, and so forth and so on. We naturally come to the conclusion, or we rest in the assumption, that it is these things that are the problem. And how critical it is to and one of the, in fact, the most universal and most effective such mechanism that arises is the blanket denial that the problem exists at all. And we work hard to keep that at bay, and we work hard to pretend that there's nothing wrong, and we work hard to fix the things that we think absolutely refuse to bend to our denial that there's something wrong. And how, when we see this, it becomes apparent how it is that over the thousands of years in which we have engaged in the effort to find an end to the misery of human life, what we have focused on, even those of us who have actually stumbled upon the nature, the reality of their actual nature, and the natural fearlessness that is natural, speak to what the result of that stumbling upon the natural state looks like from inside. Since the assumption is, the unexamined and unconscious assumption is, and understandable and quite justifiable, assumption is that the problem has to do with all this about me, about my failures, about my successes, about my stupidity, about my brilliance, about all of those people and what they're doing to me and what I have to do to keep them away or snuff them out or whatever. And how important it is that and it is the effectiveness of that mechanism of denial that is complex and comprehensive in its effect on us. How important it is to acknowledge and see that, yes, it's true that life seems to be not satisfactory. And that for all my life it is the case that most of my time and effort is spent trying to rid myself of this sense that there's something wrong by finding out what's wrong and fixing it. So long as we are unconscious of that, we are unlikely to be able to find a way out. So long as we continue to accept the assumption that things are okay and everything's going to work out, or I'll figure it out eventually, or, oh no, everything's fine, I'm cool. The chances of us are finding a solution to the actual problem are slim to none. And I talked about how the actual case is, if we look at it objectively without referring to our subjective feelings about the matter, how the actual case is that it is certainly true that there was a brief time, beginning maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years ago and lasting for a couple thousand years, brief time, when there was an upsurge of authentic and really quite radical insight into the actual nature, our actual nature, and a rising impulse among those who had stumbled upon it to be helpful to the rest of us by telling us what was wrong and what needed to be fixed. Although, for the most part, it seems clear that those who were moved by this still failed to see this underlying assumption that the problem rests in the way my life looks, the way I think about things, and so forth. And how those spiritual teachings, although that upsurge came to an end finally and all settled into religion, really, that how these teachings, for the time that they were prevalent, and now they are in the consciousness of the human species again, how they actually have, frankly, failed us. That the fact that they end up settled into religion is because they prove to be ineffective. There have been very few of us, over the thousands of years of human effort to try to solve the problem of human existence, there have been very few of us who have stumbled upon reality, compared to the billions and billions of us who have been born and suffered and died in that time. Now, to say that these teachings have failed us is not to denounce them or demonize them or separate oneself from them or anything of the kind. It's just to be adult and clear and see the fact that they have not had the effect that those who presented them expected them to have and desired them to have. And that therefore we need a new beginning, a new way of looking at things. It is certainly true that all of those teachings accurately and beautifully and comprehensively describe what it actually feels like to be human, free of fear and confusion. And to a certain extent, certainly in my case, and to a huge extent, it was the introduction to those teachings that brought me here in the end. Not as a direct consequence of the teachings, but as a consequence of the teachings having ignited in me a unquenchable fire of desire to see through to the end and to actually accomplish what they promise. But there comes a point when our understanding, the depth of our understanding and the comprehensiveness of our understandings of these spiritual teachings become obscuration and a block rather than a hindrance, rather than a help. Since we are so infused with them, it's when we hear things that have to do with the possibility of the end of human misery, it's natural that we would seek to put what we hear into the context of these gorgeous and wonderful teachings, and therefore miss the point, just as they do. It doesn't make us bad any more than it makes the teachings bad. And I talked about the fact that I have seen very clearly, as a result of a truly insane determination to find what it was that Ramana wanted us to do, which everyone agrees that is very difficult to grasp simply from reading the transcripts of his talks and his conversations and so forth. And that as a result of actually, with a complete disregard for what I knew to be the actual way that I should be, that is, quiet and not doing anything and not trying anything and being passive and accepting of whatever comes, as a result of just ignoring that in a time of intense misery, self-inflicted, obsessed misery, I kind of won the lottery. Not through any specialness on my part, but just out of sheer luck of circumstance. And sheer luck of the neurotic craziness of this mind, this personality. And how I have come to see very clearly that there is actually a problem. It's not what we think it is. It's not has nothing whatsoever to do with the nature of our thoughts or our desires or our relationships or our understandings or anything that comprise the face of our life, the persona of our life, but has to do with a completely unconscious and totally unexamined underlying assumption that there's something wrong, which of course is the suffering itself, is the sense that there's something wrong. And that sense that there's something wrong is false. It's a misunderstanding. It's a mistake from which everything else arises. So that I have come to see very clearly in my own life and in the life of some of those who have been with us for a time, that the effort to bring conscious attention directly to one's actual nature, that effort, that looking, that moment of recognition, which may even go unnoticed, but that's what it is, it's recognition. That moment of recognition of our own actual nature infallibly dissolves the sense over time, dissolves the sense that there's something wrong, and dissolves the whole apparatus of alienation from life and of the desperate attempt to find some solution by fixing something that's here or thinking differently or having a different outlook and stuff, and that those traits and behaviors simply don't show up after a while. And that it's no big deal. And in the afternoon, I tried clumsily and not very effectively. I'm never very effective at this part of this work. Tried clumsily and not very effectively to enumerate some of the things that people have indicated were helpful to them in actually implementing the work of trying to get the direct contact with the reality of our nature, which will result in the recognition that that's me. Last night in a small group, somebody brought up another thing that can be useful in this regard, and that is, which I actually had intended to speak of and forgot, and that is the old practice, the old thing of watching the space between thoughts. There is, between every thought, there is no continuity to thought. And thought is everything. There's nothing that's not thought in this sense that I'm speaking. Bodily sensations, everything is thought. And how there is no continuity whatsoever between one thought and the next, that they are particular. They are particles. And they come and they disappear, and another one comes and it disappears, and so forth. And in between this one and that one, there is nothing. By which I mean, there is you. If you watch. I think that regarding the practical, the practical aspects of how this is to be done, there seems to me to be two components to it. One is the deliberate and energetic effort, which is no different than the effort that we have expended in all of our lives trying to fix the mind or the life or the whatever. You know, I've indicated that need to search for a solution, that driving need to find what's wrong and to fix it, and to find what's wrong and to fix it in detail, is actually not a problem itself. It is justifiable and intelligent that it would arise in a context where there feels to be something wrong. And it's a great gift of the human nature, that capacity to look, to search for, to try to find, to discern, to name, to speak about. That urge itself is the same urge that gives rise to speech, gives rise to all thought. And that, contrary to popular spiritual opinion, the solution has nothing to do with destroying that urge to search. It has to do with correctly directing the urge to search to a place where it could do some good. The urge to search is natural and justifiable. And the only thing that is wrong with it is that we have failed to understand, all of us, so far as we know, we have failed to understand that the solution has nothing to do with the way this life unfolds, with the thoughts and desires and aversions and so forth that comprise this mind and this personality. That the solution is to be found in the recognition of one's actual nature, which is fearless, which is invulnerable, which is always here, which is unaffected by the most magnificent states of bliss or the most horrible states of psychological torment. So that what we seek to do in this work is to look in the right place, to try to find a way to recognize for oneself one's actual nature. And what I propose and what I claim is that effort cannot fail I mean, because what we're talking about is you. We're not talking about some new understanding or some new belief or some God or anything like that. It's just you. That effort, if persisted in, cannot fail, and will, without fail, result in an end to both the sense that there's something wrong and the mechanism of seeking an answer. Anybody want to say anything about any of that? That was yesterday's work. This morning I want to talk a little bit about humanity, about the fact that humanity itself is a creature, that it is not an arbitrary collection of individual consciousnesses, but it is a creature that is comprised of the rising of the sense of individual consciousness in this species. And that this creature that we call by the name of humanity, or I call by the name of humanity, that this creature is just like the individual, that the whole is the same, has the same sense and the same issues and the same problems and the same misunderstandings and the same misery and the same horror stories as the individual. That they are the same thing in their expression, in their arising, in their appearance. It is, this creature of humanity is comprised of is the mass of these individual sense of individual consciousnesses. I'm not sure that's a word. And therefore, it is understandable and it's absolutely clear why it should be that humanity as a creature has been so horrifically wrong for all of our history. It becomes very clear if it is the case that the creature of humanity has the same substance as the individual human beings, then it's clear how it can be that we have spent all of these 10, 20,000 years of human civilization mostly trying to slaughter each other, trying to keep what I have and prevent you from getting what I have, or getting what I might have or I might want sometime in the future. Why it is that we divide ourselves into tribes and clusters and clans of people and nations and so forth, and compete and fight with each other. And why it is that despite the obviousness of the foolishness of the way that we as humanity have conducted ourselves over the time of civilization, despite the obvious foolishness of it, we continue to do the same thing again and again and again. Just like me. Just like me. I mean, this life, my life, the life of John Sherman, was certainly not so different from the life of humanity, of human beings in the whole. I was totally wrong about everything. Totally wrong about everything. All of my efforts to change things, to try to make things better, to try to be what I was supposed to be, to try to overcome my limitations and so forth, all resulted in nothing but more misery, more suffering, and more horror for me and the people around me. And it wasn't because I was a bad person. I wanted to be good. All of it was driven by my desire to be good, and my desire to be good was driven by my desire to be free of the sense that there was something wrong, to fix myself, just like everybody. Except my particular history is a little more dramatic and a little more intense than most, just like humanity. Now, it's the case, and those of us who have some knowledge of the history of spiritual development among our species, will know this to be true. It is the case that, although it is, as I said, there have been a handful of us over these thousands of years, let's say there's been 1 million of us. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the number of human beings that have been born and died and suffered and died. A handful of us who have, by one means or another, by one set of fortunate circumstances or another, stumbled upon the actual fact of the wonder of human being, of the fearlessness and the natural state of clarity that is our nature. Our thoughts aren't clear, but our nature is clear. Our thoughts seek to express our nature and fail to do so because they're stupid. In that handful, among that handful, there has been an even smaller number who have actually tried to bring what they have seen, what has occurred to them, to the rest of us. A very small percentage of that very small percentage of humanity actually have tried to come to us and say, look, this is it. This is what it really is. This is how you should feel. This is, if you can get to this point, you'll see that everything is wonderful. Everything is all right. Coming from the standpoint that is the standpoint of all of us, that the problem rests in the effects of the problem. But a much larger percentage of that very small section of humanity which has discovered itself to be free, a much larger percentage of those have headed to the hills and actually refuse to have anything to do with us. There are stories, if there's 10 stories about people who have broken free, throwing stones at people that come to them to try to get something from them, if there are 10 stories like that, there are 1,000 actual instances like that. These stories are thousands of years old. They fade. So there's a small section of people who have broken free and still not quite understanding what's occurred to them, and try with all their hearts to bring to us the solution to the problem. And then there's a larger section of people who have broken free and refuse to have anything to do with us. They go into the hills, they hide out, they go to caves, they refuse to talk, like Ramana. Why would that be? I can tell you it's because we are one creature. And part of the strategies that we deploy when we are caught in the grip of the false assumption that there's something that needs to be fixed, part of the strategies that we deploy is to build up and strengthen and keep constant vigil over the boundaries between me and you. Because my suffering is enough for me. And I know that if I don't keep you at arm's length, that you will overwhelm me with the misery that is within you. I know that. I don't think about it, but I know that. And I keep a very careful watch on the boundaries that separate my subjective experience from your subjective experience, which is the same kind of movement as the movement of denial. Keep it away. Keep you away. How can you be of use to me? Can you make me feel good by loving me? Then, okay, you can come a little closer. Do you want something from me? Stay away. Better yet, just stay away. I can testify, I can bear witness to the fact that as those boundaries weaken, as the premise that gives rise to them in the first place begins to disappear, that those boundaries weaken between you and I, and that when I am in the presence of those who are caught in the grip of this misery and dissatisfaction with human life, that dissatisfaction is present in me. I tell you that. If I am around people that are really miserable, it affects me. Affects this body, this person, this consciousness. There's no way that I can, and no way I any longer can keep you out. I can't stop that from happening, nor do I wish to. But I can see why it would be that those who have lost the sense of boundary between self and other, the sense of protection, the sense of a wall between self and other, would run to the hills to get away. It's apparent. We are one creature. We are not separate pieces. We are one creature. This sense of individual existence is quite welcome and a magnificent gift, but it does in no way provide the ability to wipe out the fact that we are one creature. This collection of individual consciousnesses is one creature. And the boundaries between us are permeable. You know, the boundary is practical and part of the gift of human existence. But it's permeable. It doesn't keep out misery. It doesn't keep out happiness. It doesn't keep out anything. So don't be surprised if it becomes the case that as the sense of there being something wrong with you, something wrong in your life that needs to be fixed, is the desire to search for an answer begins to diminish and evaporate. Don't be surprised if it becomes the case that you become even more sensitive to the suffering of others. It's just the fact of the matter. And it's this fact, and the recognition of this fact, that has led a certain segment of Buddhist teaching to hold that the most effective way to bring an end to samsara is to evoke the characteristic of compassion. Because what I describe, when I describe the leakage, the interchangeability between the misery of others and the misery of self, what I am describing is compassion. And since we are so indoctrinated into the view that the problem lies out there in my thoughts and my sensations and the experiences and so forth that come to me, and since we are so indoctrinated in the idea, even when we become all spiritual and all lovey-dovey and want to help humanity and everything, since that's the case, the impulse is to project the definition of problem onto the presence of people who are suffering. That's the first impulse, the first inclination. You're causing me trouble. I got to get away from you. But what we experience is compassion. What we experience is the unmitigated reality of the singularity of the human creature. That's what we experience. And the fact that it tends to, that our inclination is to withdraw from the human creature because of the unpleasantness and so forth of being in the presence of suffering and ignorance, is a good part of the reason that we are still caught in this trap. Because most of the people who have stumbled upon reality have run to the hills to get away. So the Mahayana path of Tibetan Buddhism holds that the way to nirvana, the way to out of samsara, is the evocation of the characteristic of compassion. And all of the practices in the Mahayana path are geared to, in one stage after another, to develop and evoke this sense of the presence of universal misery in the human creature. Not surprising, given that little has come of it, except within closed and isolated communities of spiritual people. But it's also very clear, once the actual simplicity and practicality of what can be done to put an end to this foolishness in oneself, once it becomes clear how simple and practical and uncomplicated and inclusive is the power and the effectiveness of this simple, practical method, once that becomes clear, then it also becomes clear that this actually is something that can bring an end to the suffering of the human creature at large, in the whole. And then compassion has a practical thing that it can do to bring an end to the misery that we suffer as a whole, as humanity. Without the liberation of humanity itself from the endemic, the universal sense of being flawed and at risk and at stake and so forth, there can really be no final end to misery in any individual. Can't happen. I have no sense whatsoever of alienation from my life. I have no sense whatsoever of there being any problem here at all. I have no presence of this existential fearfulness here, in this form, in this body. But I have considerable experience of misery as I travel about in the human creature. So that the work that I do is predicated and energized and given rise to because the clear, absolutely self-evident reality that I am not separate from you. That I am not separate from you in any way. That I cannot, by any means whatsoever, distance myself or protect myself from the misery that is in your consciousness. wherever I am. Now, it's true that I try to, it's not so much I try to, it's just that it's a natural inclination that is in me to not socialize a lot, to not, go out and get drunk in the bars and things of that nature, not go to political rallies and so forth. It's just a natural inclination to kind of stay, quiet and at home. Carl and I both stay at home a lot. But then there's this work. And I tell you, from my heart, we are in this together. We are totally in this together. We will sink or swim together. And given the current state of affairs in the world of human beings, it seems like we are much more likely to sink than swim. We are not in a time of human history when the wholesale slaughter of each other and the wholesale disregard for the effects of any of our activities can go unnoticed or without consequence. We're in a time in human history when the wholesale slaughter and refusal to acknowledge the consequences of our collective presence here in this world are really likely to snuff out the human creature entirely. More likely than not. And all of the political and economic and all the other measures that are very slowly coming forth to try to do something about the impending destruction of the human creature are unlikely to have any effect. We are just too confused. We are too much at conflicting purposes. We have too much ignorance and misery within ourselves. Too much conviction that I have to do something to protect myself, to actually accomplish what needs to be accomplished on the scale that it needs to be accomplished in time to stave off what seems to be the literal impending extinction of humanity. Really, it's the truth. So it seems clear to me that a couple of things. One is that there's only one real hope for humanity. And I think humanity is such a magnificent appearance. I mean, that such a creature should come to be is incomprehensible. See, I don't hold with the idea that these things are brought into being by supernatural beings or supernatural forces. It seems very plain to me that this appearance of the creature of humanity is an evolutionary development. And it is so unlikely. It's so unlikely. There is so little practical survival value in the vivid sense of self-consciousness that defines the human creature. It's so unlikely. And I think it's magnificent. I really think it's magnificent. It's beyond any comprehension that this creature should be. And it is sorrowful beyond belief that this creature should wipe itself out. And the other thing is that it's very plain to me that the only hope is to rid this creature of this stupid idea that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. to rid this creature of this universal sense that I have to do something, I have to get something, I have to get rid of something, I have to understand something, I am in danger here, I am at stake here, and you may be too, but that's your problem. The only possibility, the only hope is to rid this creature of its suffering, of its ignorance. And since what I have seen is such a clear, simple, practical, and pragmatic, it works, thing to do, it seems also clear to me that it is absolutely, just as it is, there is this vibrating possibility of extinction, there's also this vibrating possibility of actually, not as a wish or a hope but there's this actual possibility of bringing this to all of us in such a way that it is tried by most of us. And that arising, that urge, is itself the product of compassion. It's the product of the recognition that your ignorance is my ignorance, your misery is my misery, your freedom is my freedom, your clarity is my clarity. And that's what compassion is. It's the direct, intimate experience of the misery of others, which is what's got us in this mess in the first place. I don't think that we should go out and stand on the street corners like Hare Krishna people. I don't think that. I don't think that we should form churches or get, develop ways to get people feeling, transcendent experiences and so forth. That stuff doesn't work. I think that, and what I am trying to do is find a way to reach beyond the spiritual ghetto into the mainstream of humanity itself with this simple suggestion, not requiring that anybody agree with my sense of how this of the full understanding of this, not requiring that anybody abandon any of the other things they believe, not requiring that anybody do anything other than this one simple thing, which is make an effort to get the direct recognition of the reality of your nature by looking for it. And to learn how to speak in such a way that it does not require the assent to all of the spiritual tropes and metaphors and ways of understanding things. To speak in such a way that it doesn't require assent to any of that. It just requires that it be heard by anybody, whether spiritually inclined or, spiritually antagonistic. And I've seen in the time that Carla and I have been in this work, we have not had much opportunity to speak to people outside of the spiritual ghetto. It's just the nature of the beast, right? That this is the realm in which we have worked and developed and had wonderful support of all the people in this ghetto. Really. And I am infinitely grateful for that. But we have to move to a point where I, at least, can speak clearly to everybody. You see, this is not, as another thing that I think an assumption that underlies our individual entry into the spiritual solution, or any solution, any path of solution, but the spiritual solution is what we're accustomed to, this underlying sense that I am in it for me, that I am alone, and that if I can find the right teaching, if I can find the right transmission, if I can find the right practice, then I will be free. No one is free when any are bound. That's the truth. There is no usefulness to the segregation of the possibility of actual accomplishment of an end to human misery and suffering into a select group of advanced spiritual seekers. There's no usefulness to that except the usefulness that comes from training me or whoever else embarks upon this to speak clearly and directly and to stay to the point. And also, of course, the effect that comes from the release of any large group of people from this misery, from this craziness. So that's the other part of it. That's what I wanted to speak to you about this morning, is compassion and the impossibility of protecting yourself except by withdrawal from the misery of all humanity. And it is absolutely possible for you to see that the effect within you of contact with suffering individuals is of no greater consequence than the effect within you has been of your own misery. That it is as beside the point as your own misunderstanding of your nature. It cannot hurt you. Cannot. It is thought and sensation only. Cannot hurt you. We are one creature. Okay? Okay, anybody wants to talk? Just when it occurs to you. Okay, Tom? That was quick. This is a great group. I have to say, Carl and I were talking about how really great this group of people is. I'm very pleased at this retreat. Really, really happy. Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Good to see you.
So just following on this business of talking to us, the humanity. I mean, so many of us think things like original sin, or, if you don't believe this, then you're an apostate. How do I find a way of speaking to that in us that sort of seems like
in the same way that you speak to this person, in the same exact way. The ideas that, I don't know for how long, but the ideas that afflicted you for all of your life about the nature of your reality and about your vulnerability and about your being in danger and at stake here, in the same way, they are just as, those ideas and those tropes and those metaphors are just as seemingly impervious to anything as the view that speaking about this is blasphemy or whatever. There's no difference. I mean, I am not trying to persuade people, you see, that their ideas about religion or God or their relationship to God are wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with those ideas at all. There's nothing wrong with any idea except this one idea, which is that there's something wrong with these ideas. And that idea arises naturally from the naturally acquired conviction and assumption that there's something wrong with me. And the searching about for what that is among these ideas. It's just the same misdirection as any other misdirection. The same. So, the point is not to, just as the point is not in the individual to transform or change the mind, to correct the aspects of the life that are wrong and hold on to the ones that are right and so forth. That's the mistake we've made all along. It's the same in the entirety of the creature. The problem isn't that they believe this and that and the other thing. That's just an effect of the problem. There's no need to dispute it. There's no need to pay attention to it at all. All that's needed is to suggest to everyone who is willing to listen that they look at themselves. That they seek first the recognition of their own nature. And all else will follow. Nothing wrong with any of it. It's not the problem, you see. So that's what I see. My job isn't to persuade you that what you think is wrong. My job is to suggest to you that despite whatever you think, no matter what you think, no matter what your ideas and opinions are, that it can't possibly hurt you to see if you cannot get a direct recognition of your actual nature. It can't hurt anything. This is what makes this so clean, you see. This is what makes this so clean, is that we seek nothing, no reformation of anybody's ideas about what's right and what's wrong. That's the mistake we've made all along. We're not seeking to change people's minds.
Except the notion that there's something wrong.
Yes, but I'm not trying to talk them out of that. I mean, I speak about that in a way to talk them into proving me wrong, perhaps, right? But I'm not trying to talk them into that. I'm trying to talk them into looking for themselves. That's what I'm trying to do with you, with everybody.
Yeah, I still have, my whole life my adult life has been this getting it right approach.
Yes, of course. That's universally the case with human beings. And it hasn't worked. Hasn't done anybody any good.
So then the art would be conveying this look at yourself in a way that doesn't fall into the traps of, the ideas that we have of who we are. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a child of God, I'm a, creature of
right.
sin. And
the trick is to get someone actually to look at their nature, and directly. And it's really not that hard. I've found, it seems hard sometimes, but it's not that hard. It's hard to talk about how you do it and what it feels like and all of that stuff, but it's not that hard to talk somebody into trying to get a direct perception of their nature.
They just might not see the relevance of it. So
they might not see the relevance of it. They might think it's stupid. They might think anything.
They might just think it's nothing. It might be that, but the ideas are so strong that they dominate. But yeah, you're saying just look at yourself.
Yeah. The ideas cannot survive reality. Really. And I was going to say, and I forgot, when I was talking about the fact that Carl and I have not had much opportunity to speak to people outside of the spiritual ghetto, we have had some opportunity. And in every case where that's happened, the people outside the spiritual ghetto they're like that. So, oh yeah, right, I see. You know, we are an especially afflicted bunch, us spiritual people. We have a special burden that we carry. And for most people, that's not the case. You know, for most people, the ways in which they have found to try to find a space of relative safety and so forth are pretty, you know, not so burdensome. Like they'll go get drunk, or they'll try to get laid, or they'll try to get money, or you know, it's not quite so.
Yeah, or they'll just identify pretty strongly with a group.
With
a group, you know.
With a group, right? And the spiritual impulse is in all of us. This spiritual impulse, but for the most part, it settles into religion. It settles into religion, and that's not as oppressive strategy as spiritual understanding. That's why it settles into religion. Spiritual understanding doesn't work, it really doesn't. And most people are not willing to exert the kind of internal, you know, that we have been, right? So they say, okay, well, yeah, I'll go to church, I'll pray, I'll hope for an afterlife. And that's nowhere near as big a deal as this, as spiritual stuff.
Well, I mean, they say that the ones with the toughest nuts to crack get drawn to the, you know.
Yeah,
men,
right.
you know, anyway.
Yeah. Ramana said, you know, and again, I want to say that, and I think this is an important insight for everybody, and that is that the spiritual teachers and the gurus and the enlightened ones, and I'm not that there's anything wrong with it, but, you know, authentically awake people, people who are authentically, directly aware of their actual nature, that the fact that that is the case by no means means that they know what has actually occurred. They don't. The ones who have come the closest are the ones who have had the least prior spiritual indoctrination prior to this occurring. And that would be Ramana and Nisargadatta. Nisargadatta had almost no spiritual indoctrination before stumbling upon reality. But even Nisargadatta and Ramana are obscured in their expression by the same understandings and metaphors and so forth that obscure the expression in all spiritual contexts of anything real. So there.
Thank you.
Julia. Hi again.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that it's a current movement of people who call themselves spiritual.
I'm sorry.
It's a current movement of gurus who call themselves spiritual, and they charge an exorbitant amount of money to teach people that spirituality actually means you becoming successful.
Mm-hmm.
And they draw a lot of business out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's opportunistic.
And I just wanted to share from my experience that I've been involved on a spiritual path for 12 years and going from teaching to teaching to teaching. And well, after I had an awakening experience, right, when that experience vanished, I had all the problems that every human being on earth has, except I had one extra. I had a spiritual burden on my shoulders. So I wished that I would be a normal person with a normal life, and I would not have to deal with a spiritual burden on my shoulder.
Yes, right.
And it's so difficult to break from that spiritual shell and to hear what you're saying.
Yes, it is. It's much more difficult for spiritual people. but it really isn't difficult at all,
No, it
right?
isn't.
Those understandings
But-
really are no problem.
Yeah,
They
but
just go away.
it takes a willingness
It does.
to
It takes,
hear the simplicity out of it and to really drop.
yes, it does. It takes, what you call willingness, is a acknowledgement that things are even worse than they used to be.
And that nothing works.
Or at least they're no better than they used to be.
And that
That's
nothing
the
works.
first noble truth, the recognition that life sucks. Still, I have all this spiritual understanding, and what good does it do me except weigh me down?
And experiences which are beautiful to go through but painful to lose them. Yeah. So I just wanted to reinforce that. So
Well, I'm glad to hear
people
that.
can hear
Yeah.
my experience.
You look good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Ramana said, I forgot. I often forget what I'm saying in the middle of a sentence. I think I don't know whether that's a feature or a bug, but what I was going to say was that Ramana, and then I went on to say Ramana is not like infallible. There's nobody infallible, least of all me. But Ramana used to say that this way, this work is for only the sharpest. Only the sharpest will actually be able to do this work. But Ramana was speaking within the spiritual ghetto. And I can see why he would say that, but even that's not true. Not even here in this spiritual realm is that true. Anybody actually can hear this. And spiritual understanding, although it may prolong the period of confusion and ignorance, spiritual understanding cannot in any way prevent you from trying this. And it doesn't require that you believe it. It doesn't require that you understand it. It doesn't require anything but that you do it. So even spiritual people can do this. And you know, all this arising of self-help gurus and so forth, it's just the same thing that we do, man. I mean, trying to get free, trying to get what we want. We imagine that what we want is for everybody to cluster around me and for, you know, this cathartic kind of experience of, oh yeah, I'm going to get rich and everything's going to be fine. But that's just what we do. It's just another arising of the same business of fearfulness.
Yeah, and look at the rich and famous.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Do I know your name?
No, I don't think so.
May I know your name?
Of course. John, my name is Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Hello. You look very different this close up from even... I wanted to tell you what a different experience it is listening to you from the experiences I've had speaking to Zen masters in the relationship of master-disciple, or even there's always this separation, but in this particular venue, I feel like I'm talking or hearing myself, speaking to myself, and that makes it quite different. The thing that really turned my, you might say, my search around was listening to one of your talks where you were pointing out quite perceptively that all of our lives we've been wanting, and that it took a bit of maturity to really recognize that, we were still wanting, still searching, and the most deepest maturity, you might say, was to recognize that we didn't even know what we wanted. What we were looking for was, in a sense, a mystery. And I mean, that really resonated with me. Notwithstanding the fact that I had been involved with religion, or Buddhism specifically, for many years, and still am in that sense, but there was something always behind the clouds that was the prize.
Yes, right.
And it was never
Always receding.
and it was never anyone I knew, by the way, except the teachers, of course. And the assumption was that they knew.
Yes,
They were
right.
talking from behind the clouds, it's
Yes.
like Wizard of Oz.
Well, they may be
Yeah,
talking
well-
from behind the clouds, but it doesn't mean that they know what happened.
Yeah. Well, and the teaching seems so simple. It's almost, to me, it's almost criminal that people would not have been told this, or maybe we have been told this, as you said, but it was couched in a way that was. I mean, even Socrates said, "Know thyself." I mean,
That's right. That's right.
I mean, can you get more basic than that? Even the song said, "The nearness of you." I mean,
Yes, that's right.
and then you could say the nearness of me. What could be nearer than that? But not to even to not pay attention and not to believe it, essentially. And I guess I have a question, but I don't know if it is a question. But one of the things just to kind of go back to what you were talking about earlier, is about seeing the space between thoughts and recognizing that as being oneself. One of the things that I wanted to ask you this, that I've heard for years and years and years, is this: when I'm still, there's this very fine hum. It's almost like I'm sitting under a electrical thing. And it never goes away, never. If I wake up, it's there. If I go to sleep, it's there. It's always there. And I think there was one monk who said, "Oh yes, that's the nada sound, the sound of silence."
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things in coming to this work is recognizing that, well, I am hearing that sound.
That's right.
So it can't be
That's right.
me.
That's the truth.
Yeah. And that's important for me. But again, I can't see between the thoughts, because this is always, I mean, it's almost like the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always there. I don't see it as a problem.
It seems that way.
Yeah, I don't
It's
see
not
it as a
the case.
problem.
It
Yeah, I
just
don't see
seems
it as a
that way.
problem. I just noticed and was wondering if I could somehow either ignore that or use it in a way that would be helpful. Otherwise, just kind of even go back to what is hearing that sound. That there's just the hearing, I know that. There's no me hearing the sound.
Well, there is, though. That's
there?
not true.
Oh,
that's
really?
that's just a spiritual
Oh, okay, I'm glad to hear that.
spiritual metaphor. Of course, there is you. You exist. You are here.
Right.
In fact, it is incomprehensible that it should have arisen within the serious spiritual community,
Mm-hmm.
the idea that you are inexistent. That's incomprehensible to me. You are the only thing you are certain of is that you are.
That's for sure.
About that, nothing else do you have that kind of certainty.
Sure.
Everything else, your certainty about anything else's existence is all conditional and provisional.
Right.
But about your existence, you are
Bottom line.
no way in the world you can be talked out of that,
Right.
which is the cause of considerable confusion in the spiritual realms, where the inexistence of self is the paramount insight.
Well, even the Buddha said that in the Diamond Sutra.
Yes, I know.
No self, no person, no living being, no lifespan.
Yes, I know. Well, I don't know what the Buddha said.
I don't either.
And, really,
That was in quotes.
what we know is what was written about what
course.
the Buddha said sometime after his death. But I wouldn't be surprised to hear that was the case. I mean, the Buddha is not any different than you. the Buddha in the breaking through to the reality of his nature is just you. You know, the same wrongness of understanding and metaphor and so forth were present as the Buddha's mind, just as they are in yours. So the whole elevation of the Buddha to a godlike position, or any spiritual teacher to a godlike position, is counterproductive and doesn't make any sense at all. Because I'm confident that the Buddha Shankara would say, I am the same as you. I am human.
Yeah.
I mean, he walked around for, 49 years and died from eating bad meat.
That's right. Well, it just means awake. I mean, it doesn't mean
Yes,
that
that's
he was
right.
special. It just
Right.
meant he was awake.
Right, and that's an example of a spiritual metaphor that has become a burden rather than helpful.
So to get back to the point, then there is a me that, and the search is for the me,
That's right.
and it's not a problem hearing
No.
that sound. Just recognize it as something.
That's right. In fact, you have already seen and communicated the fact
Yes.
that the presence of that sound, which is known in other traditions as Om,
Yes.
same, not a sound, Om,
Yes.
that the presence of that sound it can be a useful artifact in recognizing the fact that it is you who are experiencing, apperceiving that sound,
Okay.
and point you in the right direction, which is inward, always inward.
Good.
And I want to clarify something too. These things that I've suggested, like the space between thoughts and all the other things I said yesterday, they are just suggestions, like to give an idea of what it is that I'm talking about, what might be useful or might be helpful. The key part of this work is to always look inward and to watch. So it's not like, as you said, that the space between thoughts I can recognize as me. But if I watch for the space between thoughts, I will absolutely end up in looking at me, which is not the space between thoughts. But when there's nothing else present except empty, what seems to be emptiness, I am left looking at me. So if I watch for that, I will absolutely have the direct apperception of my own actual nature, and if I am lucky, I will recognize it as such. It's the recognition that makes the difference. And the recognition doesn't have to be a big deal. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. And it may even go unnoticed. But so it's watchfulness, it's watching inwardness, watching inward, watching space, watching for the appearance of the next thought, not in order to learn something about the nature of thought, but to be watching the right place. You follow me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm very happy to hear from you.
We'll hear more.
Helen?
The irony then that when that happens, then that's the only thing that is.
I'm sorry. Can we do this up here? I can't. I didn't hear what you said.
Well, if you look at the space between thought, and that's just a way to that's okay. If you look at the space between thought, and that's just a way to see that there's nothing there, then the irony is that suddenly, then you become the only thing there is.
Well, actually, you are the only thing there is.
Exactly.
You don't become that. You are.
Yeah.
That's the case.
Yes.
Yeah. And? That's not a problem, right?
No, that's just that.
Okay. And the other thing, and I'll get back to this, okay? What I did just now, I'm certain that the people who watch this videotape won't hear what you said, but what you said was that if you're watching for the space between thoughts, when you see it, you will see that you are the only thing here.
Yeah.
And I concur. That is the case, and that's what you will see. Whether you recognize that to be the case is unimportant. That you recognize it's you is the critical element. You follow that? Okay. And you may not even notice that you've recognized it. But the recognition is the critical part of this looking. That's why I was flailing about yesterday trying to understand why it was so clear to me that intention was an important component of the work. And I came to see, actually, just this morning as I was driving over here, that the reason for that is because it's the recognition that counts. It's not the accidental happening upon reality that counts. It's the recognition that counts. It doesn't have to be conscious. Okay? I'm sorry.
Okay. I've been trying to frame a question about compassion, and I'm not sure that I've got it, but I'll
Okay.
try. Is there a different quality to it seems to me actually that there is a different quality between my own feelings of suffering and misery and the feelings of suffering of another person as I experience them. Is that true?
Well, it's true because there's a certain distance, and your own suffering and your own misery and ignorance and so forth, you're very much more intimately familiar with. You have been working with it, looking at it, dealing with it, and wishing it weren't here and so forth for a very long time. The suffering and misery of others, although it is the exact same quality as yours, is not so familiar to you. It feels more distant, not so familiar. But that changes.
It changes. Okay. Because it feels like my own, I need to do something about it.
Yes.
Get rid of,
Yes.
resist,
Yes.
whatever. Whereas another person somehow, it's just there.
It's optional whether they get free or not.
Well, it just is, no, I somehow maybe it's easier to accept.
Yes, right. That's what I mean by that. And that's the, of course, the reason that we have been so successful over all these thousands of years of blocking out the suffering of others. It's much easier to deny the suffering of others as my own suffering than it is to deny my own suffering. It's easier to deny theirs.
Right.
Now, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Okay. It also seems easier to accept it. To somehow to take it in.
Listen, we have like all these thousands of years of developing effective strategies and relationships and so forth with all of this, with our own misery, our own ignorance, with the misery and ignorance of others and so forth, and that those mechanisms that have come into being to protect us from our own life and to protect us from the misery of others are very powerful and very long-standing. They don't dissolve immediately. The ones that have to do with me, they go away first. But the capacity to deny and hold at arm's length the suffering of others takes a much longer time to kind of evaporate. But it's the same.
Okay,
the
so
same
basically
thing.
saying it is the same.
It's the same denial, yes. Exactly.
And that it's the same experience.
It's the same experience, yes. Yes, it's just, and once it comes to the point where you are cognizant of it, it begins to lose its difference, its differentiation. It's just here. But that just comes with time. You see the apparatus that has evolved in your own individual consciousness, the apparatus that has evolved to protect you and to try to work in a way that will make you capable of receiving things and good things, and even maybe the promise of life, the things that have evolved in order to protect you from the danger, protect you from even knowing the hopelessness of human existence and all of that. Those apparati, is that the word? Apparati? Those apparati include the apparatus to protect you from the recognition of the suffering of others as your own suffering. It's the same context and the same apparatus. It's just that we have become much more effective at honoring the false notion that you are separate from me than our effectiveness in the deployment of these apparatuses to protect me from myself, to protect me from my life, and so forth. The idea that you're separate and you're on your own and you're whatever, like if you're bothering me, then you just need to go away. My solution to being bothered by your misery is to make you go away, to talk you into going away, to pay you to go away, to kill you so you go away, that's my solution to you. I don't have that solution available to me to this array of misery that is, I believe to be my own suffering and have nothing to do with you, except that of course you make it worse because you don't live up to what I want you to be, and you're intruding into my space, and you're, all of that. It's part of the downside of the appearance of self-consciousness, the appearance of the sense of being a separate consciousness. It's part of just part of the package that comes with it, is that separation, the consciousness of separate existence, produces the consciousness of you as being somebody else, and the consciousness that I need to deal with this stuff that's right here in my face, and you're in my way, so go away. So, and that changes over time. The appreciation of the intimate and sameness of your misery becomes much bigger over time. And that's why those who feel it run away. I mean, that's just the obverse of making you go away. Right? Is that helpful? Okay. Some of these things you guys ask me about, and a lot of what you ask me about, I haven't even thought about until you ask it, which would, I say, in order to excuse my kind of bumbling around trying to find a way to express what I see. We all see things very clearly. We do. We all see things very clearly. We are hindered in actually expressing what we see, firstly, by the mass of ignorance that afflicts us about what our actual nature is and what the nature of the problem is. That hinders our ability to express what we see. And by express what we see, I mean even to express it to ourselves. We automatically think that whatever we see means this or that or the other thing that we have already recognized to be the case. And that's true for all of us. We see clearly. We have never, ever, for a moment, been unaware or unconscious of our actual nature. But we are so bamboozled by all the things that we have learned and all the ways we have discovered to try to protect ourselves and enhance ourselves and so forth, that we don't even know what we see and we cannot express it clearly. Well, the same is true for everybody. The same was true for the Buddha. The same is true for Ramana. And it is certainly true for me, that I see very clearly, and when you speak to me and ask me questions, then I have to find a way to express what I already see. And that's my excuse for stuttering and bumbling around and so forth. Shankar.
John, I was, today morning when I was listening to this talk about feeling about the suffering. Sometimes I feel that I have the same physical pain that my near and dear one has actually. If there's a pain on the side of my near and dear one, I feel the same pain. And for a long time I thought it was a disillusion or maybe I'm psychologically thinking about it, but the same physical pain is there. And thought it was like some other pain or something because of what I do. But it is just so true, and I feel that. And if someone is like so anger or
Yes, that's right.
irritating, it
And you just want to get away.
I just want to
Because that's what we've learned to do, right?
Yeah.
It's just make that go away.
Yeah,
First, we learn to do that in our own personal consciousness. Like, we make that go away. I don't want that here. Let's get distracted or something. But it's the same with our relationship with so-called others.
yeah. So it's not like it is. Is there something that can be done? It's just there.
That's it. It can't be. Nothing you can do about it. Nothing. And the truth is that it doesn't hurt you. It does not harm you. Just as your own ignorance in the past has not really caused you any harm, so too the ignorance of others does not harm you. You need not run away from it. That just like you don't need to change your own understandings and traits and beliefs and so forth, those that are true will stay, those that are false will go. It's the same with the ignorance of others. Nothing needs to be done about it. Nothing.
Okay.
You are not hurt by it.
That's good to know because I thought that I'm getting the same pain
Right.
and it is like, but after a while it goes away actually.
Yes, just like everything.
Yeah, it just goes away. But at that time it feels like like want to run away
That's right.
somewhere
Yeah, I know.
and just put up a wall or a wall of denial or
Yeah,
just
that's right. That's
yeah.
exactly right. It's the exact same.
yeah.
We have the exact same relationship to the misery of others as we have to our own misery. We have no strategy or plans for how to deal with the misery of others other than the same strategies and proposals and so forth that we use for our own misery. Denial being chief among them.
So I'm using the same thing for myself. I'm denying my misery with the same wall
Yes, that's right.
and I'm not aware of it.
That's right. Yes, and of course not. What we are aware of is this deep desire to make things right and to make it so that I am not threatened by the phenomena that come and go within me. And that phenomena may include the misery that you bring to me. And my deepest desire is to remove that threat to my essential nature that your misery presents to me, just as my deepest desire in the case of my own ignorance is to make it so that that does not threaten me. And the most effective means of that is denial. Is to, well, that's okay, that's nothing.
It looks like I'm running away from my own thing. I mean,
Yes,
like,
that's right. Right, it's the same. It's the same. And the outcome, well, we look around. The outcome of it is clear. Read the papers.
I think now I'm acknowledging that there is something wrong.
Yes,
Okay.
that's good. See, that's the key. That the Buddha or whoever it was that formulated that was absolutely correct. That is the first thing that must be seen. Is that there's something wrong, or it feels like there's something wrong. That's the acknowledgement of that and the recognition of that is critical. Otherwise, why would you do anything other than what you're doing? Right? I mean, everything's going okay. I'm good. How about you? I'm good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. One more? Anybody? Peter. I remembered your name again.
Oh. Thank you. I want to ask you about distractions.
Okay.
And being here, I'm just very aware of lots of distractions. I mean, I have a full set of videos ready to go in my mind. And I think that that's my life. I mean, and that the process, as I see, is to see myself between distractions. But is there something better than that? It's to look for myself between distractions. And then maybe the distractions will lose their...
But to see, there's no problem with that. I mean, it is a good place to look. But the premise is false. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good place to look. This is something really interesting. The fact that you do something for the wrong reason doesn't mean that doing it isn't effective. The distractions, that we have a deep inclination to think that the distractions are a problem, like they are what's causing my trouble, when in fact the distractions are just thoughts, no different than any other thoughts. It's my addiction and my deep desire to be distracted that is the problem. And that deep desire to be distracted is the same deep desire that fuels the entire structure of misery and ignorance. The thing that says, there's something wrong, I need to find out what it is and fix it. What's wrong is that, this is what's wrong now, is the distractions. I need to find a way to fix it or to see it in a different light. These things are troubling me. But these things are just thoughts. It's our own inclination to move into distraction as part of our overarching strategy of denial. That's the problem. And that takes the form of the deep desire to see them go away. That's involvement with them. So then that's the reason why in many venues people talk about how you should not worry about it. You should not do this. You should not do the other thing. But all of that doesn't bother you at all. None of that causes you any trouble. Not even the deep desire to make it go away causes you any trouble. The only trouble is the desire itself, is the urge itself, the sense that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. The desire, I take back the thing about desire. The desire arises as a product of that underlying sense that there's something wrong and I need to find out what it is and get rid of it. But if you can see between the thoughts, if you can watch between the thoughts, you will catch yourself. But there's a lot of ways to do it. And the distractions aren't a problem. I mean, if the distractions were the problem, then we'd be doing something entirely different. Actually, if the distractions were the problem, then the spiritual work that we've done for all these thousands of years would have borne fruit. Go figure.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that helpful?
That's helpful.
Yeah. But you don't have to look for the space between the distractions, because you're here all the time. You just have to look. Just have to look. Watch. Watchfulness. Inward watchfulness. I hope I haven't just coined some...
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to take a break. I'll be back at 3 o'clock. Again, I don't want to bore you with my gratitude, but I am really, really grateful to all of you for your presence and for your attention and for your interest in all of us, for your help. So, I'll see you at 3, and enjoy your lunch and enjoy the fine day out there. I think it's a pretty day.